everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Ultimate Supply Chain Podcast. This is the space you'll remember where we discuss all the different challenges facing supply chain professionals today. I'm your host, Louise Barber. I'm head of global marketing here at DHL Supply Chain, and I'm on a mission to bring you the experts to answer the questions that you have that might be keeping you awake at night about your supply chain needs. I'm really excited about today's topic. It's quite futuristic, but that said, it's something that is affecting our lives on a daily basis. And I'm really excited to have Tim Tetzel with me today. Tim's the Vice President and Global Head of Accelerated Digitalization at DHL Supply Chain. Tim, welcome. It's great to have you here. Can you just give us a bit of background into who you are and what you do?
Surely can. What an intro, yeah? Thanks for having me. As you said, Tim Tetzel, leading a program we call Accelerated Digitalization at DHL Supply Chain globally, and having the pleasure of doing this for 4 years now since we started. And what my responsibility really is with a team of experts from our regions and functions is to bring more digital technologies to a wider number of our 1,500 operations worldwide. And digital technologies in this space means anything digital, so can be sensor solutions, can be analytic solutions, can be robotics, digitally enabled automation, but also wearable devices that help our operators do their job more efficiently. Imagine, for instance, a smartwatch that tells you where to walk next to the next pick. Yeah, I'm based in Cologne, Germany, very close to our head office in Bonn. Happily married, have a son, and very much looking forward to our discussion here today.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Tim. It's great to hear a bit about you. It's one of those times where we talk every day. We probably don't know each other that well, come into contact. It's great to get a bit of background. Hadn't realised that you've been doing this since the beginning, so for the last 4 years. So even better, you are the man to answer some of those burning questions for us. But before we jump right into the topic, I have to admit I get a bit confused about this. We talk about digitization, digitalization and digital transformation.
Yeah.
Are those spelling mistakes? Can you clear those up for us a bit, Tim? What's the difference between those?
Yeah, I'll do my best. And so I think depending on which audience has that conversation, it may very well be spelling mistakes, but I think there are very clear differences between these three terms. And so what we work by is basically that digitization is in the end just the transformation of an analogous process or analogous information into digital format. A simple example, you can also still today run your entire warehouse operations on paper without any system, without any IT. That's possible. That's also what it's been like for a long time in the logistics industry. But imagine you get your pick list, you get your orders, it's all mail-based, you just print it out and so on. That is very paper-based. And now digitization would simply be you put some system in place that transforms this information from paper-based analog into digital format. Nothing else. You don't change the process, nothing. Okay. It's just now in digital format. Now, if we look into digitalization now, that would be that on top of having the information now computer readable, digital available, you now actually do things differently. An example again, what you couldn't do before with paper-based information is more advanced planning, maybe also adding some algorithm for who picks what where, maybe looking at capabilities of your workforce in the warehouse. Maybe someone is a bit stronger and can lift heavier items and so on. So now maybe you want to introduce not only a digital process, but you want to do things differently. You want to have a new business model, or like a new way of doing things. That would be digitalization. As an example, an algorithmic tool that assigns different tasks to workers that have different capabilities, or also maybe then in the midterm putting in some robotic process automation, so some automation of digital information that sends emails out proactively and so on. That would be digitalization. And then the last point, digital transformation. And I think that's the most interesting one and also or the most important one because it encompasses digitization and digitalization, is about setting an organization up for maximizing the application of digitalization and digital solutions. And that's also what we do. So my boss has the title of Digital Transformation Officer. And our role then also is to ensure that our organization is really set up to reap the benefits of the digital technologies that are already out there, while not overloading our organization, but really doing that at pace to maximize the impact of what's possible today and then also tomorrow.
Okay, thanks for that. That actually makes perfect sense. So, digitalization is what we can do today. Digital transformation is how we might mix that up and do something very, very different in the future.
Yeah, so I think there's like some things in digitalization we can already do today, and then digital transformation is really, as you say, yeah. So like I'm part of the digital transformation office, so we're about, okay, this is what we can do today. Let's roll it out, let's scale it, let's really deploy this to our operations, and that's a continuous process actually. Yeah, so what I did 4 years ago was definitely different to what I do today, but the concept didn't change.
What you're doing today, yeah,
it will be again different tomorrow. Yeah.
Oh, quite. I mean, I've been here just over 3 years now, and the difference between 3 years ago and today, just in terms of the solutions I see when I'm out and about visiting different sites, but also the narrative that we hear in the organisation, we're on a very different trajectory today than, even 3 years ago. But Tim, how much do we do in the supply chain? How much is digital transformation, and so how much is digitalization?
Yeah, it's also a good question, Lou. And I would say, so of course I can't give any absolutely specific numbers, but I'll say, when we started in 2018, let's say back then, 80% of what we did was more on was the simple things. Yeah, so it was first of all setting a basis. Yeah. So that's like, do we have the right systems in place? Do we have people that know how to use these systems? Do we have more computer-readable information in place? And 20% was back then already the advanced automation, also the robotics we now see in many of our operations worldwide. And I think that's a shift that we now seen over the last 4 years that has almost reversed itself. Yeah, so I would say from my the time that I spend now, also 80% will definitely be on deploying more advanced solutions jointly with our teams. That would be collaborative robotics, that would be smart automation solutions, that would be algorithmic or data analytics tools that use the data we already have available. So there really has been this transition from 2080 to now 80-20 with the focus on now more advanced solutions. But we also shouldn't forget that there's of course a regional flavor to this. Yeah, it's my role is global, and I work with teams in all our 5 regions. But of course, what we do in North America is different to what we do in Peru. What we do in Australia is different to what we do in Malaysia or Indonesia. And it's all the same logic, it's all the same journey, but it's on different steps in that journey, different maturity curves. And the opportunity really is to cater that perfectly, and with our team of experts across all regions and functions, realize what makes most sense today, and then also set the basis for what else comes tomorrow.
Sure. And how much of look, we've seen massive acceleration, as I've just said, in the last couple of years. How much of that has come as a result of disruption associated with COVID?
Yeah, Lou, very good question. And I think COVID has been a major disruption. I think most recently we see, unfortunately, not the only one that we as a global community have to deal with. But, I'd like to go a bit back to 2018 when we started our accelerated digitalization journey and outline the main drivers back then, because in essence, what we've seen is that these disruptions, so whether it's COVID, Brexit, the geopolitical situation, amplified what we've seen back then. Yeah, but let me give you a bit of some background, some examples there. Because what the supply chain board saw in 2018 were 3 main trends. First of all, consumer demands for logistics services were going through the roof. And that just meant, back then already, every one of us was used to having maybe the Amazon app on their smartphone and expecting, okay, if I order something online, it is delivered same day or next day in most geographies. Yeah. It's delivered free of charge, and I can return it at any point in time. Yeah, and that's, if you compare this, and I remember when I was much younger than today, you would order in a mail catalog and you would send that out, and there was like €7.90 something, in Germany at least, for logistics services, and they're all gone. Yeah, so basically this huge consumer pressure was the first aspect. The second one was, if you wanted to deliver these services, you need workforce, lots of people, just to ensure you have any chance of picking, packing, sending, returning all of these items. Yeah, so look at the distribution centers that you would need to have in place to just have any chance at delivering these services that customers demanded. And I think it's important to note here as well that, of course, started in the consumer space, but there's an immediate follow-up pressure on B2B as well, because customers of B2B expected then the same, and that means for DHL supply chain, we saw this also already happening across all sectors, not only consumer, retail, e-commerce, but also in our other industry verticals we're active in. Yeah? So first one, consumer demands. Second one, on the supply side, labor was getting scarcer and scarcer, at the same time more important. And then the third trend that happened is that at that time frame, we actually saw digital technologies being mature enough to make a difference and alleviate some of these concerns. Yeah, so like algorithmic tools which would allow you to do better planning, using a smaller number of people in your warehouse to work more efficiently, looking a bit ahead in terms of which orders come in tomorrow. That was something that came in, as well as robotic solutions that could already help you with maybe taking over the most mundane tasks. You don't want to have your people just walking around a warehouse all the time and basically every 10 minutes doing a pick of an order, which is the actual value-adding activity. Yeah? So these three things came together.
Sure.
That's why we set up accelerated digitalization with a focus on technologies that were already mature enough to being scaled across our operations worldwide. And that's the journey we've been on ever since. And now back to your question, because all of that is preamble, of course. What then happened with COVID, for instance, is that this was just amplified. Now imagine people are not only used to order online, but now they stay at home and order everything online. Imagine that's,
exactly. Only choice.
Exactly. So you don't have any choice anymore. And that was like something, so that pressure increased even further. Yeah. But then if you look at labor, now imagine suddenly the people that you have get more sick.
Fewer people.
Yeah. Or now imagine also a very concrete example. Yeah. So think about a large e-com operation gets containers in with product from wherever. It has to be unloaded. Yeah. And what we would do typically is then also, we need to unload that container fast because it didn't actually arrive at 9 a.m. as we thought. It only arrived at 11, but our customers won't be happy if we say, oh, sorry, came late, you get your order only next day or the day after. So we would just send 5 people into that container to unload. In COVID, they were like, oh, you need 2 meters distance. So 1 person in that container. Yeah. And then that also, is another huge amplification of this trend of labor scarcity, because now we had fewer people and we even had a restricted area of how we can use the human workers that we have to provide these services. And that's then when you look into digital tools, robotic solutions for unloading, maybe flexible conveyors, maybe robotic arms and so on, where we could really make a difference in that space also in COVID. And I think the point then there is also once these disruptions take place, all the concepts, you would discuss this, theoretically before, we would think, okay, what if, and so on. This happened and it's here to stay. Yeah. So all the technologies that we introduced during COVID, all the pressure that we felt during COVID actually didn't go away. Has not gone back. Yeah. So it's just then a new normal, so to say. And just last comment maybe on that. You can make the same case. Brexit happened, driver shortage. It's not COVID. Same. It underpins and emphasizes, amplifies really these challenges that we are addressing with digitalization. And I will not go into the current geopolitical situation, but I think that's all leading to the same argument that digitalization is a massive help to increase the flexibility that 3PLs and the logistics industry needs to excel in this new normal, where I think COVID hopefully will be solved at one point in time, but new crises, new disruptions will come. And only if you're flexible and can adapt is there any chance to excel in that marketplace.
Completely. And I think, we have to see digitalization as an enabler, because it absolutely is. And if you think of the experience that we as a business had during COVID, you're absolutely right. The demand for digital solution went through the roof. And thanks for explaining, getting into the nitty gritty to why that was. Actually, the distance between people unloading hadn't crossed my mind. It's obvious now you say it, but it actually hadn't crossed my mind. Except I remember working with one of your colleagues, and he was working on a jacket that actually had an alarm in it. So if you got too close to the person next to you, that would, remind you that you need to keep socially distant. Yeah. So I think we all learned a lot during COVID. And I think, not just in this, I think there are so many aspects of life that have changed during COVID that will never return. So, some for the good, some for the perhaps not so good. But I think digitalization and the way we use it, that collaborative robotics, is certainly one of the things that is here to stay, that will improve and enhance the lives of our colleagues. As you say, it means they can do more value-added work. Typically, what questions are customers asking you, to which the answer might be, yeah, you need digital transformation? What are the customer needs that we're satisfying beyond cost?
Yeah. I think so. Overall, you could almost like say what our customers want is three things. First of all, they want to be optimally informed. So that's where's my shipment, where's my good, do we have enough at the moment, and so on. So that's like really visibility, optimal information. Second one is, do you move my product most efficiently? So like, do you really ensure that, we are using latest technology, but it also has to be reliable. It can't be something where you show me a video that it works once and then the operation is down every week for a day. Yeah. So I think that's the second aspect, that this logistics service is really it's really delivered most efficiently. And then the last point is on everything quality, so optimally assured, I'd say. So is the product handled adequately? Is it, if it's cool storage, is it really, cold chain, is that properly handled, and so on? And for all of these, you would then have a portfolio of digital solutions. In DHL supply chain, of course, also, we have our Go Green solutions and so on. But, for me, talk about digital, where the customer expects us to offer that portfolio to him, and being knowledgeable. Okay, what works where? What can I already deploy right now? What should we still test, and so on, to then deliver these services. Yeah? And I think then, because you mentioned this point on cost, that also becomes something which is much more a partnership and value discussion than a pure cost discussion. Sure. Which I think is the most exciting discussions to be in. If it's just about, hey, can you do this cheaper? Have to do that oftentimes, but it's not the meetings or the discussions that I take lots of energy away from. It's much more if it's about value, and that can be, again, of course, can be cost, can be money, but can also be employee satisfaction, can be better visibility, new customer insights, all of these.
And how much customer demand is there, Tim? And this is a really unfair question, but are customers coming to you saying, show me your digital solutions? Or are you having to say, okay, I'm responding to the questions that you've asked us around optimizing and giving you access to data. Let me show you. Yeah. Is it a pull or a push for us?
Yeah, so it's both. I'd say at the moment we're 50-50. Yeah. So like also, if you ask me, I think I spend too much time still on pushing. Yeah. What is available, what we can do, how things could look like with all of our teams today, then just like being pulled in, or like also people asking proactively, hey, how can we make something work, and so on. But it's 50-50 now. I think it was, again, in 2018, 2080, and of course the goal is to move towards at least 80% pull, 20% push. But maybe one concrete example as well from this year. So in May, I was asked to work with a large automotive spare parts company and outlining basically what can we do for them as DHL supply chain. And of course, our account lead took me with him to that meeting. And that was like a real, like, for me, it was mind blowing. But they were honestly and positively excited of what we could show, because one thing is showing, here's like a slide with our technologies. Here's like a dashboard that shows you how much we have in your sector, in which region, and so on, which like they were already like, okay, that's really cool. But what we also did is, again, a bit digital transformation. I had a colleague of mine at standby in a warehouse, not where this meeting took place, because that was somewhere in Germany in a nice wine region. But I had a colleague of mine in an automotive warehouse where we deployed an autonomous forklift solution. And he was in that warehouse with a camera and a microphone, so basically like we talk right now, and then I dialed him into that meeting. So I could really go from, here's our strategic agenda, here's like where we are at the moment, here's like one concrete example for the sector that is relevant for you, and now let's dial into that warehouse so that you can see that DHL is real about it. And I think that was then also what really took them like by, okay, that is really cool. Now we would really like to see even more of this. Let's do a tour of your North American UKI warehouses and maybe do some business with you. So I think that's then really the discussions where you can create that pull even more.
Yeah, bringing it to life in the moment. There's nothing quite like that, is there? And experiencing it. And, I think about 100 years ago when I was a kid, when we all used to pretend we could talk into something and talk to other people. And now we've got mobile phones and actually do it. And we're, a step away from all being in driverless cars. You're right. We've got driverless forklifts in our operations that are just interacting as if they've always been there. So again, I guess that's a comment on the massive acceleration we've seen in implementations around these things over the last couple of years in particular. It really is incredible. So I'm going to ask you another unfair question because I've already done a few of those. We've opened that door. If a customer came to you today and you agreed on getting on a digital agenda with them, what is the lead time between that first conversation and starting to see some of that digitalization being implemented and making a difference for them? Is it a really long lead time?
So it also depends on which technologies we look at. Yeah. So
Right.
what I would typically think of, and let's just like stay with that example of this spare parts company. We as DHL supply chain work in a funnel logic because the market changes all the time. Technologies change, but we say, there are some technologies which we still test and, evaluate. Is this something which works, which we are also comfortable enough to roll out at scale? That's, innovation, proof of concept, first funnel stage. If we say, yep, works, then we move over to productizing that technology, making it off the shelf available. That's also what I have a team to work on, that we can really say, okay, technology works. Makes sense in these sectors, these geographies. Let's ensure that for opportunities where we have this, we don't have to go through another RFP, another market screening, but we just pull it out of this shelf, deploy it, and then really scale that up, last stage commercialization. And now to your question of lead time, what we would typically also be mindful of, for that specific customer, are there some, I don't want to call it low-hanging fruits, but some things which you can deploy very quickly. You mentioned these jackets with sensors where you actually are notified if you're if you're closer than 2 meters to the next colleague to you. Yeah. So this is something which we can do in a week. Yeah. Some sensor solutions we can also deploy in a week. Some software-based optimizations which can be done in weeks or months. But then if you look into more complex process changes, so your example of the autonomous forklifts, which we have live, that of course requires involvement from health and safety. Exactly. Yeah. So that's like something where we
investment in knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that is something where we look then into more like months to also, some of the projects also, to be honest, that we deployed during COVID took a year and longer. But that's also fine because we still need to learn. And I think what customers also look for is that DHL supply chain provides tested and proven technology, but also does this in an environment where we are sure that the process is the right one, technology is the right one, health and safety is ensured, data security is ensured, and so on. And that are things, the more complex the deployment, the more complex also these topics to look through. But, then from a customer perspective, the idea would be to show that journey, look into what is most important to them, and then also transparently communicate what can be done right now, how would that inform what comes next, and when do we do these things that we can do next.
Amazing. You made me think there about, I've heard the expression digital by default. Are we, for new customers that are just starting their journey, is there such a thing as a digital supply chain that doesn't need that transformation because it starts digital? Yeah. Are we there yet?
Conceptually, we are there. Yeah? So like also digital by default is also something actually originated in the UK. So like our UK team created this overview. If we think of the funnel again, if you really are now, you've okay, makes sense, works, productized, deployed it many times, and we say, where this technology makes sense, we shouldn't even have a discussion anymore. Let's deploy it. An example.
Yeah, sure.
If you do in a new warehouse, if you have 5 people cleaning the floor every evening, like why wouldn't you use a cleaning robot, which is you can just buy it, So this would be one thing where you said, that is now a part of the digital by default, and that is also something which our IT, so our BD IT teams, but also our other customer teams use then to ensure that when we as a global team, but also our regional management looks at new project, that we can say, did we consciously look at this list, and if we could deploy a technology, did we consciously decide against it for whatever valid reason? So I don't know, maybe there's a contract that was still running for 10 years, but that is really something which works and which we're trying to push out even more. Again, there the point is, of course, what is digital by default in the UK is different to what is digital by default in Brazil. But the concept is the same. And we imagine a convergence of this over time, which I think will not be 1 or 2 years, will rather be 5, 10 years. But it's also, I think, something that customers expect from us, that we can also say, this is really what we would expect in every new warehouse, every new transport operation. And if not, there's a valid reason. I'm based in Germany, can also be sometimes data protection aspects, why some things are possible in some geographies, not in others. But definitely one thing to push even further, which we also focus on at the moment.
So you mentioned customer expectation there, Tim. To what extent are our customers expecting us to, listen, obviously customers are expecting us to lead the way. That's exactly what you just said. How do we develop our technology? How are we innovating? Are we responding to needs, or are we innovating ahead of the game? What's our research and development program like?
Yeah. So I think the clear aspiration, so we need to be ahead of the game. We need to be the thought leader on these topics for our customers. And I think we also are. The thing is, DHL Supply Chain, the most global third-party logistics provider. And, just when we look at the area that I oversee, of course, it is my aspiration to know exactly what is going on in the marketplace, which technologies are out there, what is deployed. And I think that's also the beauty of it. It's not me only here in Cologne, but it is thousands of our colleagues all over the world that then work jointly to collect, okay, here are the trade shows we go to, here's like the technologies that we've seen, here's what we tested, all in a standard way. And that's like something which also will be very difficult to copy by any of our competitors, because they don't have that reach. And the other point then, I think really is this logic of the funnel approach and productizing, that we say, we can actually assess what technology makes sense where, what's like our, maybe ballpark number of robots to deploy. And that is where we are very attractive for what you mentioned, the partners, the technology partners in digitalization. So we had, for instance, last year, we announced an agreement to deploy 2,000 robots with one provider by the end of 2022. We've already hit that target right now. So we're only in August. But we already deployed more than we set out for. But that's also then your aspect in terms of research program. One thing is new from new. So what new technology is out there, but there's of course also new from existing. So how can we, with our operations, inform these technology companies, which very often don't have the same logistics expertise as we have, but we can really put that into our operations. We can really give it into the hands of our operators and say, it's really cool that you set it up that way, but honestly, our floor is not as in,
slightly different.
Yeah, exactly. It's not as in your gym at home. It's not just like completely flat. There are some bumps in it and so on. So I think also you mentioned you went to APEC again, mezzanine with mesh flooring. Yeah. And then you say, great if a robot works on perfectly cleaned up marble. Yeah. But that's maybe not the reality. Our warehouses maybe there's, a concrete floor, maybe there's some steel beams in there, maybe it's a bit dirty and so on. So those things we can also feed back to our providers, inform them about which product development features really make a difference, and say, if you actually put that in place, we can deploy your solution at another 20 sites. And that's what I think, also this new from existing is a huge opportunity for us, where we are also in a position to really lead what digitalization and logistics look like, and definitely for our customers be the most interesting partner to talk to about what works in their operation right now, but also in 3 years, in 5 years, and also what they should have done already 8 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting, Tim. I went to the Innovation Centre while I was in APAC last week, and I know, look, we've got 4 innovation centres worldwide now, but I got to see the quadruped. I'm guessing that you know the quadruped, which is just like a robotic dog. And initially you think, okay, you've built a robotic dog. What are we going to do with a robotic dog? But when you start to think about how people interact, to your point a moment ago, when, the ground isn't always flat. So the guy that was demonstrating this to us started to demonstrate this quadruped thing and really give us examples of how, in terms of final mile, that will cover terrain that nothing with wheels is ever going to cover. And the flexibility around it, and the years of innovation that has taken, and the years of work it has taken to get us to what is essentially a robotic dog.
Yeah.
But the applications of that are potentially huge.
Yeah.
So really exciting to see that we are really investing ahead of the game. We don't quite know what the use case is going to be yet, but in terms of the methodology, it's like you say, sometimes what we're striving for may not be the obvious things. It might not be a flying car.
Yeah.
It might be a vehicle that works on a dirty floor.
Yeah.
Perhaps not so exciting, but its application is enormous.
But maybe also, Lou, one thought there just quickly, because like what you mentioned, so this dog, I assume this is the Boston Dynamics Spot dog, yeah? And that's like the perfect example, because we have a collaboration with Boston Dynamics, and they come from, I think, so I forgot what their actual vision is, but they almost want to show what robotics can do and how, you have robots
exactly the art of the possible.
Exactly, the art of the possible, doing backflips and so on. But the really cool thing is, and they mention to this oftentimes. They, for instance, they have the robot dog Spot. They also have a humanoid robot with arms and a head, which is called Atlas.
Yes.
And they said, they had people saying, "Oh, I need your robot in my warehouse to move boxes." And they were like, "Do you really need, a multi-million-dollar research product to move boxes in a warehouse? Maybe the form factor is slightly different." And that is then exactly to your point, where we can come together, because jointly with these providers, and that's concretely what we do also with Boston Dynamics, we look at what skills do you have, what capabilities do you have, which the supply chain will never have that expertise in robotics and building robotics, never. But we can look into what do we really need and what's the best form factor for delivering that service. And I think that's really where it comes together. And then for robots, I think really just like also what I sometimes always refer to, dirty, distant, dangerous, dull. These 4 elements is where you can already deploy robots today. Also where this dog then helps a lot.
Oh, yeah. And the other thing that I felt I was a bit surprised about with the robotic dog, look, I work in brands, so I'm used to being touched emotionally, not just rationally. The dog was cute. And basically it's a plastic dog.
Yeah.
It does amazing things and works just like a dog, but what is it in me that finds this dog cute? There is something about me that wanting to interact with it. And whilst I can rationalise that and think, that's a one-off, it's not a one-off. Because when we visited the site and we saw people interacting with the bots, the things that are moving around and going to the right places to do the next pick, there's almost an emotion between the pickers and the bots. There's a real thing. This robotic collaboration is a thing. And seeing them work side by side, it really is collaboration. And is that something that is typical?
Yeah, I mean, so I also wanted to mention, so what you outlined, this collaboration, that's also to your earlier question on how we can scale up. That's crucial, that we get this type of, no anxiety, not like sort of, I want to be part of this and so on. And what you outlined there are very concrete examples of where this works. What we've seen for all our deployments of robots is that the operational team actually also does a naming competition and then gives each of the robots a name. And of course, I think every site has a C3PO and an R2D2, but it also gets very creative. So in Spain, they gave the robots have names of dogs of the warehouse workers, so they have the name of the warehouse worker dogs.
Oh, nice!
Yeah, my favorite though is from the UK actually. Where they have one robot, and it's one of those that you saw in Asia, so that takes a tote, a carton through the warehouse and then is picked into, and this one is called Oscar de Bot. And
they got Patrick Kellehertz as well, haven't they?
Yes. So like basically then also having our senior management represented as a robot on the shop floor. And then, of course, the team has lots of fun saying, which robot has the lowest pick rate again, and so on. So, but I think that engagement is really also what makes a difference. Great to see this also, as you mentioned, from the teams in Asia Pacific.
Yeah, it was amazing. It's really quite inspiring to see. And, people not seeing this as a threat, but really appreciating the interaction with the robots to make their the quality of the value they were adding so much greater. Tim, I'm going to ask the $1 million question. What's the future look like? What's happening in, I mentioned talking into things when I was a small child and, we talk about flying cars. What's the future like in 10 to 20 years?
Yeah, if I only knew. No, but I have an idea. Yeah? And I think one thing that was actually mentioned in one of the previous episodes with Richard Wilding. So this idea of having fully dark warehouses, and like there's no human in there, it's all done by robots or by automation, and we're all out of jobs. I distinctly do not think that this is what the future look like. Yeah, it won't be that way. Yeah, so you look at sort of the key driver of what changes how we provide logistics services at the moment is flexibility. And flexibility is typically something where you need to balance robotic, automation, human labor, and so on. So I think the future will be one where we have more rewarding jobs in our operations, but also in our functions, working with digital tools, but where you can flex up and down based on also different demands. Yeah, so you can add more robots if you don't have the labor, but if you have then more tasks that require versatility, then that is also something where you can bring humans in again. That's typically the more interesting tasks. So also for robotic arms, it's very difficult doing things that are super easy for me as a human. Yeah, so I can just grab this bottle and open it, and I don't need any training for it. Yeah, but next I'll just grab this face mask, soft, and I could put it on. But these very dexterous tasks are still very difficult for robots to do. So I think there's always, less walking. You can do that with a robot, but then managing the flow, orchestrating, doing the value-added tasks. That's what we see lots of people for, and I think it's then really, in my opinion, the most exciting industry to work in, because you will see digitalization applied not only where it is anyway native, so online and so on, but in operations, robots working with people, working with humans, always with the best possible mix of who does what, and also with the most rewarding tasks in there. So I think that those type of operations that use the best combination of still for a very long time unique human capabilities, but complemented with robotic automation, data insights wherever possible, is what we'll see in the next 5 and I think also still 10 years. Yeah.
That's exciting, Tim. And I guess that whole Internet of Things, where you've got things operating with things and then those things operating with individuals, real people, that's going to be a really exciting future development, I'm sure.
One last point, and we can also, I just like that made me think what you mentioned, things acting with things. Just one concrete example again, because I don't want to be too technical all the time. But what we've seen with robots, for instance, is autonomous forklift. You mentioned that as well. Takes a pallet, puts it somewhere, fine. But then we saw this actually, moved the pallet up to the 12-meter pallet rack, but stopped and said, pallet position is full. Yeah, but we were like looking, it's not full, it's empty. We can see it. Okay, robot says it's full. What we found out is there were spider webs all the way up there. Yeah, and the cameras, because we say, we need to be very sensitive and safety first. We're sent to such a sensitivity level that they said no. The spider webs actually made this robot say, I can't put this pallet there. But that also shows, the journey we still have to take and where humans and robots really have to work together to really, realize the opportunity we have in that space. Yeah. And that's just like one. Your floor example is another one. But I think there's like really, you can see how these jobs change from doing the grunt work for the human to really enabling flow, ensuring perfectly set up operations, ensuring that people, robots, automation work together. I think just one example I also wanted to share, which is quite tangible, to see how this collaboration also works in practice.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And even the robotic dog, the quadruped, that animal, that robot, here I go, that robot can go to places that you might not want people to go to for safety reasons.
Exactly. Yeah.
We've just come out of a pandemic. I can definitely see an application for something robotic to do a bit of delivery that you might not want humans to do in the future.
Oh, yeah.
Just incredible how what a massive contribution technology can make to a human's life. If you could leave one message behind, Tim, perhaps to not so much a customer, but to anybody who's thinking that robotics might not be the way forward, that digital transformation may not be the way forward, what would you say to convince them?
I would say that for employees, customers, and also for investors, I think it's a better world if we realize the opportunity that technology gives us. Yeah. So, and I'll make it very simple. I'm just looking at what affects most of our lives, which is jobs then. And if we look into, what really is driven by digitalization and technology, it's jobs changed, it's jobs that we lose, and it's jobs that we gain, these, 3 entities. And from everything that I have seen in my entire career at DHL Supply Chain, but also before when I worked in consulting across all logistics verticals. Yes, there are some jobs that we lose, but these are typically not the ones where people like, I really want to keep unloading very heavy Prosecco crates out of a container for the rest of my life. Yeah, I really want to
Exactly.
walk a half marathon or a marathon every day. Yeah, so I think that's where we don't see a huge issue. While jobs change, they get more interesting. I think it's super exciting to work in that space at the moment. If I would go back when I was working in that warehouse in Australia 18 years ago now, I mean, that job would look different. I think it would look more interesting. And then maybe I would even have accepted the guy's offer when he said, hey, you can become a shift manager here. Maybe I would have accepted back then. And then lastly, jobs gained, the whole opportunity for us in logistics, in more technology-minded profiles, and actually seeing this really making a difference in the most essential industry that exists. I think that is why there is no, I just don't want to work with it. I want to keep working manual. I want to, stay as is. I think there's just no option of excelling in the current environment where change really is the only constant with that type of mindset.
One final question that you've more or less answered, I believe. I ask all my guests, what does connecting people and improving lives mean to you? You've got the best example here.
Yeah. So maybe let's start from the back. So improving lives. Like again, one thing, of course, from a customer perspective, would be delivering or continuing to delivering ever better logistics services. But improving lives also means for me to what we alluded to as well. Realizing the opportunity in creating the most exciting jobs in logistics that exist. And I really, I also have a data science training, and then the question was always like, oh, you want to work for Google, Goldman Sachs, all of that stuff. But I really believe we have an absolutely enormous opportunity to make logistics, also for these profiles and young talent, the most exciting industry, because you can then actually use your tools not to optimize a web page, and that's very important still, but to deliver essential services, which logistics are, to the entire global community. Yeah, so that's really on improving lives. And I think on connecting people for me was also exciting opportunity for DHL Supply Chain. So my job always starts in the morning, typically talking to our colleagues in APAC. Yeah, if I'm very early, still catching some of them in Australia, but then basically going around the world and discussing with this amazing team of experts from all regions, countries, and functions of how we actually realize that opportunity of improving lives. And I think, of course, also have the luxury of being born in a time when digital tools are what they are right now. You mentioned mobile phones. We talk now just from our home offices on screens. But I think that is then really also why it's super exciting to realize some of these opportunities to improve lives with DHL Supply Chain, with the global organization that we are. We are then truly, truly unstoppable.
Yeah, we really are. Tim, I cannot thank you enough for spending time with us today. Your enthusiasm for your subject is absolutely infectious. And it certainly made me want to learn even more about what we do today and what the future holds for all of us in terms of digitalization. So thank you for making something quite technical, easy to get hold of and accessible and exciting for us. And thanks to you also for listening. If you found this insightful, spread the word, share, subscribe. We'd really like to see your reviews and include the changes that you want to see in our next episodes. So thank you for joining us and see you again soon.